here in studio, thrilled to have is a buddy of mine, and I'm so thrilled to have you here on the Rich Eisen Show in person. My man from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, by way of Ann Arbor and Seattle and Tennessee and Minnesota in a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame career in the National Football League. Good to see you, Steve Hutchinson.
Absolutely.
What's
Thanks
up,
for
Hutch?
having me.
How you doing, man?
Nothing much. I'm doing well.
What do you make of Harbaugh sitting down Winston and telling him what's what and being as unvarnished as possible? What do you think? Let's put it this way. What do you think Bo would have thought of that? What do you think Bo would have thought of that?
It's a different era.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was sitting back in the green room thinking about it. You know, when I was going through the process of recruiting in high school, you know, the platform was so much smaller. You know,
when Lloyd Carr came knocking on your door?
Yeah, Lloyd and Mike DeBoard, who's actually now at University of Tennessee. But, you know, my mom would just say, well, you just be home at 7 o'clock when that house phone's going to start ringing. Because that's, you know, they had such a small window to call every night, and there was no cell phones. And nowadays, the platform's huge. You got social media, and, you know, recruiters and coaches can get a hold of these kids throughout, you know, you name it.
Sure.
And so I think it's genius on his part. You know, when you have a Heisman Trophy winner coming in and sitting down on national TV talking football, you know, Bryce, the kid from Baylor that just called in, he mentioned, you drop Harbaugh's name. You know, these kids, these, you know, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids in high school that are trying to decide what college they want to go to and eventually make it to the NFL, when one guy's name keeps getting mentioned, you know, it's a hell of a recruiting tool.
So I'm here with Steve Hutchinson here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk a little bit offensive line, because normally O-line gets right there at the top in the draft. But this year it's a totally different story. We're talking about Mariota and Winston. We're talking about edge rushers. We're talking about wide receivers potentially all going before an offensive lineman goes off the board. Which one intrigues you the most?
You know, I like this kid Scherf from Iowa. You know, I think he can take a little bit of the same route that Zach Martin took last year. You know, probably a tackle in college, knows he's going to play guard at the next level. You know, Zach went to the Senior Bowl this last year, got thrown in at guard. You know, he was probably supposed to be a late 2 pick, ended up being a first rounder and made the Pro Bowl. So I see Brandon kind of filling a little bit of the shoes that way in his path, going to the guard position and making a run. And for him to be up there with one of the top offensive linemen to be drafted over than a pure left tackle, it kind of tells you that the tackle market and the offensive line market itself is probably down a little bit this year.
What was it like for you being drafted? What was your draft experience?
You know,
like?
It was crazy. I was at my parents' house. I had heard for the weeks and months leading up to the draft that I was going to go. You're never going to fall past this number. If you're on the board, this team's going to take you. But it's funny with the draft, you know, when one team picks a player out of sync or out of what they were supposed to do, it just sends a panic throughout the rest of the teams, you know? And all of a sudden there was this run on D linemen, and I went from being a lock at 11 to a lock at 13 to falling to Seattle at 17. And, you know, it's funny how things work out, but you never know.
So Holmgren called you? You got a call from Holmgren?
I did.
And
I did.
What was that like?
And it was pretty surreal. I mean, you know, a guy that I grew up, well, I was a big fan of the NFC Central when I was growing up.
Nice.
And so, you know, the black and blue division, the Big Ten of professional football, watching the Packers and the Vikings and the Bears. You know, when a legendary Packers coach calls you, obviously went to Seattle and said, hey, we want to draft you, I was like, let's do it, you know? And it was fun. And on a side note, I saw Mike for the first time this last January. Spoke to him for the first time since I left to go to Minnesota.
With the poison pill?
Yeah. I coached under him down the road here at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl.
Okay.
And so he called and said, hey, you want to come join? So I spent the week with him. First time I talked to him since I left. So.
Now, the poison pill, which is you still have that living on in infamy with your Twitter handle at poisonpill76. That was the clause that was thrown into the contract by the Vikings, did it? Or did your agent do it?
It was a collaboration.
A collaborative effort that knew that the way it was worded would be unmatchable by the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, by definition, you know, you put a clause in a contract that you know the other team can't, or it's near impossible for them to match. And if they were to match it, they would have to. It would make the Seahawks be on the hook for the entire guaranteed. The contract would be entirely guaranteed.
Right.
So you know, the arbitrator ruled in our favor, and the rest is history.
So, but you knew at the time there'd be no turning back.
I knew when I signed the offer sheet that
it's over.
It contained that. Yeah.
Right. That there'd be hardly any way for you to go back to Seattle. Then Holmgren held it against you personally?
Oh well, it took, let's see, almost 8 years, 10 years for him to talk to me. So. I don't know. You have to ask him.
Wow. So let's say, walk me through before we take a break here with you, and then we're going to play the win-loss game with some of the fans, and you'll be sitting here and be judging. What is it going to be like for these offensive linemen, maybe in Tennessee and certainly in Tampa, to have a young kid come in and now your hopes and dreams of winning it all and or being able to stay put and put food on the table and keep your kids in school where you are is based on this kid you've never met and have heard many things about, in certain case one of them, that might not be ready for being a grown-ass man in this league?
Well, this is the time of year where all 32 teams think this is their year. You put so much time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you work so hard into the training, going into training camp, that you think this is going to be our year. So from when they draft a kid that comes in and he's highly touted, especially at the quarterback position, you have to have faith in him. And it's really up to the coaches to simplify the game plan until the kid's ready to take the training wheels off.
But what do you do? I mean, do you take him aside?
As an offensive lineman?
If you're an O-lineman in Tampa and Jameis Winston walks in the door and you hear everything about him, and you get to do you say anything then? What do you do?
Quarterback's a little different position. Most guys, I don't want to say you haze, but you probably give a cold shoulder until they learn where they're the pecking order. Quarterback is a little bit more fragile upstairs. You want them to feel more comfortable early, especially if he's going to be the guy that's going to suit up come open week one. So I think you give them a little bit of a tough love, but at the same time it's nurturing. You bring them in, you kind of make them feel like one of the guys, and hopefully he kind of gets up to speed fast.
Yeah, Sapp always said, "Don't mess with my quarterback or my kicker."
Yeah,
one of the two.
Yeah.
Don't both.
Right. I mean, those are the guys who are going to win at the end.
That's it. Steve Hutchinson is here, right here in studio.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.